So I'm so happy to introduce our next speaker. He is one of the best diplomats for science that I have ever seen. His ability to engage anyone at any level of complexity is bar none. Very happy to introduce Dr. Orrin R. White.
Thank you, Alice. Where's my button box?
Here's your buttons.
And this is the pointer.
This
And
is
this
the
is
laser
the
pointer,
advance.
and that's advance.
Okay.
And here's your podium mic.
Good morning, HAO. Several years ago, Tom Bogdan gave me a letter from Leo to Don Menzel he found in the CU archives. In the notation of that letter, told about Leo's death on the 1952 Khartoum eclipse expedition in India, in Egypt. This began my study of Leo and his contributions to HAO and Solar and SAC Peak. This shows the climax station of HAO, complete with red Jeep, right here. Bill Curtis tells me that this is a 1960s time picture. It's not dated. It's on the back of postcards that Walt had printed, and as they were about to be thrown out years ago, I scarfed them up and took them home, and I copied this for you. Okay, let's go. There we go, up here. Leo really made climax and SAC Peak successful with the invention of the birefringent filter and the chronograph and his personal interaction with the staffs at those places. In 1933, he invented or conceived the birefringent filter. He didn't build it, but Uman in 38 conceived the filter and builds the first one. And this device is basic to all our flare control programs, and is still used throughout the community, not just the university community, not NSO, but worldwide now. It's the mainstay of our flare control system. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how the damn thing is made. I'm sorry. We've got experts here that know how to do that. And that's Jack Harvey and David Elmore. And I'm sure they can hold forth about how to make it and how to adjust it. They've taken them apart, put them together. It's basically a selection of a series of slices taken off of calcite or quartzite crystals and adjusted in such a way that you get an interference pattern that puts one of the patterns on top of lines such as H alpha. And you can, there are lots of tricks to making these things and making them work. And Jack and David are pros at that. I see David back there shaking his head. Is that up or down, David? So that was the first contribution that he made, and it was made in 1933. Then in 38, he invented the chronograph and installed Peak D. And of course, the thing that made it work is right here. That's the occulting disk that blocks out the bright disk of the sun and basically does the same thing that the moon does at eclipse. And there's cameras at the back of all this. He also built one version of this that had a spectrograph attached to it. And I didn't show that because it's not as nice a picture. This is one of his images from the definition of the coronagraph. Let's see, where am I? In 1939, he was invited to give the Darwin Lecture at the Royal Academy, at the Royal Astronomical Society meeting in London. There he showed the first images of the corona without eclipse. He also discovered the 3 emission lines that we're so familiar with. The green line at 5303, the yellow at 5694, and the red at 7374. At that time, they did not match the location, the wavelengths of any known spectral lines from the sun. So it was a mystery until Edlane and Grotrin identified these as coming from iron 14, iron 10, and calcium 15. Now, that's a real surprise because the ionization potentials for these 3 are very high. 210 electron volts, 200 electron volts, 800 electron volts. Remember that the ionization potential of hydrogen is 13.6 electron volts. So you could not, if these lines are present, you obviously don't have any hydrogen, any neutral hydrogen. You have a few protons wandering around looking for electrons, but that's it. So the corona had to be hot. It had to be like 2 million degrees. So this rolled out as a discovery in 1944, a major discovery about the composition of the solar atmosphere. This is a picture of Bernard Lyot, Jack Evans, and Walt Roberts at Climax in 1948. Now, let me tell you. At the beginning, I mentioned the letter that Tom Bogdan found. It's from Leo to Don Menzel. It's in Leo's own hand script. And it happened after this. He came here. And the interesting thing is, here's a copy of the first page. And over here, whoops, there's this side thing, which I've emphasized over here. And it points out 2 things. Jack Evans took the HAO experiment, and Bob Lee and Bob Cooper went with him. And at the end of that, it mentioned that Leo died during that expedition. And so, puzzled by that, because I didn't understand the details, I wrote to my friend Jean-Claude Pecker in Paris and asked him about it. And he said, I was at that eclipse, but not on this experiment. And so he wrote a very nice letter in beautiful French. Let's see what I got here next. This is the HAO experiment. This tidy little spectrograph system. It had 3 spectrographs in it. It contained the famous jumping film system from advancing these huge films. I don't know how well it worked. I'm sure it was noisy. But that's what we took over there. And I didn't find any reference to what had been observed there. Jack has a nice description of what they were doing with the instrument, which I have, but it doesn't talk about results. Now, this is part of the letter that Jean-Claude sent to me. I have the whole thing. It's been translated by a friend in Cortez. And I'm not going to insult you by trying to read it in French. Bill Curtis can help me out. But I'll tell you what it basically says. Leo and his wife, Madame Leo, were closing the boxes containing the films from their experiments. And there was this Egyptian guy, Ali, who was supposed to be kind of coordinating all these experiments close to Khartoum, right on the Blue Nile. And you can see there, it says they were closing he and his wife were closing the boxes, and Ali was sitting on a chaise lounge, smoking a cigar and drinking whiskey. So I've heard other comments about Leo from Gordon Newcock, for example. He was not very popular after the eclipse. But anyway, he did write the summary of all the experiments, and it can be found online. But after the eclipse, he went to Cairo to arrange for the sending of the boxes and the films with the agreement of the observatory at Cairo. He was extremely, very fatigued, and on the travel with the observations, he died. A heart attack on the train going to Cairo. Now I have this entire document, which I'll give copies to anybody that wants them. But Jean-Claude was certainly familiar with all the French parts of the experiment. I don't know what happened with his part. He was involved in the radio astronomy group. They moved into living out in the desert. But that tells me what happened to Leo. It does not diminish his contributions at all. They continue today. You'll see new coronagraphs being installed. You'll talk to my friend Joan Burtwell, and she can tell you all the new goodies that are being installed and used in Hawaii. Of course, we all know that Sac Peak is now shut down. Climax was shut down a long time ago, but the work continues with the same kind of energy and vigor that we had in the past. And to a certain extent, I'm sorry to not be involved anymore, but I'm busy arranging my life in southern Colorado and in Arizona. I spend the winters near Tucson, so I can get to Jack Harvey and Bill Livingston and others, and the library frequently. So that's the story of Bernard Leo. He's a great man in our science. He did contributions that kept the observatories at the forefront of science and solar physics for many, many years. So, thank you very much for your attention. Okay, Jack, no comment? Holy Lou.
You should mention that Don Menzel broke his leg during that observing period and carried on.
I didn't know that. So did Jack Evans.
Jack Evans.
Jack Evans at
Jack
Khartoum.
Evans actually broke his leg during that observing period and carried on with the observation of the eclipse. And you realize he was out in the desert. It was a pretty awesome experience for him.
And that leg troubled him the rest of his life. I noticed that when I worked for him at Sac Peak many years ago. More contributions? Yes, sir.
So during this period of late 30s, Kiepenheuer was building a number of chronograph stations in the Alps.
That's correct.
What kind of collaboration was it between you and
Not very much. There was still a little problem about the war the memories of the war, I think. And we know that Kiepenheuer was contracted for 20, but they didn't build that many. We don't know where they went. At least I don't know where they went. But they were all based on the LEO design. Thanks, Kim. Anybody else? One more? Yes, sir.
My name's Dick Fisher. I'm an old high mileage, higher astronomer.
But still kicking.
I can only add two things. One of them is the wife of a former director that I worked for used to refer to Mr. Ali as Fingers Ali. I don't know why that was.
Say that again, please, louder.
Ali was known as Fingers Ali. I'm not sure why that was. Jack broke his leg rather badly, as you know, and was hospitalized in Khartoum, where he met the Mahdi at that time. And Jack's comment was, he is the only Mahdi that I ever met. But the idea that Leo had in designing the filter was he had a background in radio engineering. And the Leo filter, optical filter, is an optical analog of what was called a stagger-tuned FM radio. And it was a very nice application of interference properties.
Thank you, Dick. Yes.
I just want to say thank you for a wonderful talk. And in fact, they did successfully get eclipse pictures of the 52 Khartoum eclipse. And we have coffee in the next room. And they're also on the eclipse website that HAO has. And there's information about that as well.
Are there any
Thank
pictures
you.
of the spectra? Are there any spectra from that eclipse?
That I can't answer. Maybe someone else can.
Anybody
I
know?
know there's imaging.
I couldn't find anything.
Oh, thanks, Dick, for that nice talk about Leo. In addition to his genius in inventing the coronagraph and the Leo filter, I have to point out that he was also a genius in polarimetry. He advanced the science of polarimetry, especially as applied to the sun, in the 1920s and 30s, far beyond what had come before, and set a new standard for learning about the physics of the sun through polarimetry.
He was a giant in our business. Any more? Been waiting for you,
I
Dick.
just wanted to, this is Philip Judge, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. Also point out that talking to Arturo Lopez Ariste, an ex-HAO person as well, he's recently gone up to the Pic du Midi and is using Leo's telescopes. And there's quite a lot of misunderstanding about how some of these things work still with experts in the field. Kuchmi told him, oh, you're never going to see the corona from there anymore. And so he put a 10747 instrument on the back end of this and immediately saw his first coronal loop. So, you know, this is alive and well, and Leo is alive and well in France as well as around the world.
Thank you, Phil. Dick?
I heard the story that just after the war, the German chronographs of Kiepenheuer's were liberated by Roger Gallet, who was a very elegant young French naval officer. And he was the one who went up there and grabbed all the instruments.
Thank you very much for that bit of history. Kind of understandable after the Second World War. Anybody else? Thank you so much.